Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Horizon, watching the stars drift past the main screen. The human exploration vessel had been traveling through deep space for 3 weeks now, mapping new star systems and looking for planets that might support human colonies. It was quiet work, the kind that let a man think about home and wonder if the coffee in the mess hall would ever taste as good as the real stuff back on Earth. The ship hummed with the steady rhythm of engines and life support systems. Jake had grown to love that sound over his 15 years in the space service. It meant everything was working as it should, that his crew of 43 people were safe and doing their jobs. The USS Horizon was not the biggest ship in the human fleet, but it was reliable and fast, perfect for the long missions that took them far from home. "Captain," Lisa Carter called from the communication station. Her voice carried that particular tone that meant something unusual had caught her attention. "I'm picking up a signal." Jake turned toward the young woman who had joined his crew just 6 months ago. Lisa was good at her job, maybe the best communications officer he had ever worked with. She had a talent for finding meaning in the static and noise of space, for pulling messages out of what most people would dismiss as random interference. "What kind of signal?" Jake asked, walking over to her station. Lisa frowned at her screens, her fingers dancing across the controls as she tried to clean up whatever she was receiving. "It's old, Captain. Really old. The transmission format hasn't been used in over 1,000 years. Most of our modern equipment can't even read it properly." First Officer Alex Rodriguez looked up from his position near the tactical display. Alex was a careful man, the kind who always thought through problems before acting. He had saved Jake's life more than once by asking the right questions at the right time. "Could it be some kind of automated beacon?" Alex suggested. "Maybe left over from one of the old exploration missions?" Lisa shook her head. "No, sir. This signal is active, broadcasting right now, and it's not coming from anywhere in human space. The source is about 6 light hours away, in a system our charts show as unexplored." Science Officer Danny Wright practically bounced out of his chair with excitement. Danny was young, maybe 25, and still got thrilled by every new discovery. His enthusiasm sometimes annoyed the older crew members, but Jake found it refreshing. It reminded him of why he had joined the space service in the first place. "Can you decode any of it?" Danny asked, already moving toward Lisa's station with his portable scanner in hand. "I'm trying," Lisa said. "The signal is fragmented, breaking up every few seconds. But I think I can make out some kind of coordinates and what might be a distress call." Jake felt that familiar tightness in his chest that came whenever he had to make a difficult decision. Space was full of dangers that could kill an entire crew in seconds. Ancient signals from unknown sources ranked high on the list of things that kept starship captains awake at night. "How far off our planned course would we have to go?" he asked. Navigation Officer Grace Turner consulted her charts. Grace was older than most of the crew, a veteran who had served on exploration ships since before Jake became captain. Her steady hands had guided them through more dangerous situations than he cared to remember. "About 8 hours at full speed," Grace said. "We would still be able to reach our next survey point on schedule, assuming we don't stay long." Engineer Chloe Baker spoke up from the engineering station. "Captain, I should mention that we're running a bit low on fuel cells. Nothing critical yet, but if we're going to make any detours, we should probably limit them." Chloe was the kind of engineer who could fix anything with spare parts and determination. She kept the USS Horizon running smoothly, even when regulations said the ship should have returned to port for maintenance months ago. If she was worried about fuel, Jake knew he should listen. "What does your analysis tell us about the signal source?" Jake asked Danny. The young scientist consulted his readings. "The energy signature is massive, Captain. Whatever is generating that signal has power systems far beyond anything we've ever built. I'm reading multiple sources too, not just one." "Multiple ships?" Alex asked, his voice carrying the concern they were all feeling. "Maybe," Danny said, "or possibly some kind of installation. The readings are unlike anything in our databases." Jake looked around at his crew, seeing the mixture of curiosity and caution in their faces. This was why they were out here, to explore and discover new things. But they were also responsible for bringing everyone home safely. "Lisa, can you clean up that signal anymore? I want to know what we're getting into before we change course." Lisa worked in silence for several minutes, her equipment humming and clicking as it processed the ancient transmission. Finally, she looked up with an expression Jake had never seen before, something between amazement and fear. "Captain, I think this signal is a battle report," she said quietly. The few words I can make out keep repeating the same things over and over. Numbers of ships destroyed, casualty figures, tactical positions. And sir, some of these numbers are enormous. How enormous? Jake asked. Millions of ships, Captain. Maybe tens of millions. And the dates, if I'm reading them correctly, suggest this conflict has been going on for a very long time. Medical Officer Kevin Hayes looked up from his station, where he had been quietly reviewing supply inventories. Kevin was the kind of doctor who worried about everyone, even people he had never met. "How long?" he asked. Lisa checked her readings again as if hoping she had made a mistake. Based on the transmission format and the date codes embedded in the signal, this war has been fought continuously for approximately 800,000 years. The bridge fell silent, except for the steady hum of the ship's systems. 800,000 years was longer than human civilization had existed. It was a span of time so vast that Jake could barely comprehend it. "That's impossible," Alex said finally. "No civilization could sustain a war for that long." "The evidence suggests otherwise," Danny said, staring at his scanner readings. "Captain, we have to investigate this. We might be looking at the discovery of the millennium." Jake considered the options. They could ignore the signal and continue with their planned mission, mapping empty star systems and cataloging uninhabited planets. It was safe work, predictable work. Or they could investigate what might be the longest war in galactic history, risking their lives to satisfy human curiosity. "Set course for the signal source," Jake said finally. "But we go in carefully. Passive sensors only until we know what we're dealing with. And Grace, plot an escape route in case we need to leave in a hurry." The USS Horizon changed course, carrying its crew toward a discovery that would change everything they thought they knew about war, peace, and the nature of conflict itself. The USS Horizon dropped out of hyperspace, and Jake Morrison felt his breath catch in his throat. The main screen showed something that defied everything he thought he knew about warfare. Thousands of massive warships stretched across space as far as their sensors could detect, locked in combat that turned the darkness between stars into a light show of energy weapons and explosions. Each alien vessel was enormous, easily 10 times the size of the largest human battleship. They moved in perfect formation, firing weapons that lit up space with beams of pure energy. The scale of the battle was beyond anything in human history. Jake realized that what he was watching represented more military power than every nation on Earth had ever possessed combined. "My God," Danny Wright whispered from his science station. "Captain, I'm reading over 15,000 active warships in this sector alone, and the battle extends beyond our sensor range." Grace Turner worked frantically at her navigation console, trying to plot a safe course through the chaos. "Captain, we have 2 distinct fleets engaged in combat. The larger vessels appear to belong to one faction, while the smaller but more numerous ships represent another group." Lisa Carter monitored communication frequencies, her face growing pale as she listened to the intercepted transmissions. "Sir, both sides are using languages I don't recognize, but the tactical chatter suggests they've been fighting continuously. There are no breaks in the combat, no attempts at negotiation." Jake watched as a warship the size of a small city exploded under concentrated fire from enemy vessels. The explosion was so bright it temporarily overloaded their sensors, yet within minutes other ships had moved to fill the gap in the battle line. It was like watching a deadly dance that had been choreographed over centuries. Tactical Officer Ryan Phillips ran analysis programs on the combat patterns, his screens showing tactical displays that looked more like abstract art than military formations. "Captain, this is unlike any warfare doctrine we've ever studied. Both sides are following incredibly rigid tactical patterns." "What do you mean?" Jake asked, moving closer to Ryan's station. "Watch the Zephyrian fleet, the ones with the larger ships," Ryan explained, highlighting a group of vessels on the display. "Every 73 minutes, they execute the exact same flanking maneuver. And the Cathara Federation, the smaller ships, respond with identical defensive positioning every single time." Alex Rodriguez studied the patterns with the eye of an experienced military officer. "They're not adapting their tactics at all. It's like they're following a script that was written thousands of years ago." "Look at this," Grace said, her voice filled with amazement and horror. "I've been tracking ship movements for the past 2 hours. The entire battle follows a predictable cycle. Both fleets advance, engage for exactly 72 hours, then withdraw to regroup before starting the exact same pattern again. Danny ran spectral analysis on the debris field that surrounded the active combat zone. What he found made the situation even more disturbing. Captain, this debris field contains wreckage from ships using technology that spans hundreds of thousands of years. Some of these hulls are so old they're using materials we can barely identify. The implication hit Jake like a physical blow. This wasn't just a long war. It was a war that had been fought the same way for so long that the combatants had forgotten why they were fighting, or how to fight any other way. Kevin Hayes monitored his medical sensors, scanning the alien vessels for life signs. Captain, I'm detecting millions of life forms aboard those ships. But the biosignatures are strange, like nothing in our medical databases. Strange how? Jake asked. They appear to be multiple generations of the same species living aboard each vessel, Kevin explained. I'm reading what appear to be children, adults, and elderly individuals on ships that are clearly designed for warfare. It's as if entire civilizations live aboard these fleets. Lisa managed to decode portions of the alien communications, her translation programs working overtime to make sense of languages that had evolved in isolation for millennia. Captain, from what I can understand, many of the crew members aboard these ships have never known anything but war. They were born on warships, raised to fight, and will die in combat without ever seeing a planet or knowing peace. The USS Horizon drifted at the edge of the battle zone, its crew watching in fascination and horror as the ancient war continued around them. Jake tried to imagine what 800,000 years of continuous warfare would do to a civilization. How many generations had lived and died knowing nothing but conflict? Try to establish communication, Jake ordered. Maybe we can learn more about why they're fighting. Lisa transmitted standard first contact protocols on multiple frequencies, using mathematical concepts and universal constants that any spacefaring civilization should recognize. The response was immediate and uniform from both fleets. Every alien ship that detected their transmission turned weapons toward the USS Horizon and opened fire. Shields up, Jake shouted as energy beams lanced through space toward their position. Grace threw the ship into evasive maneuvers while Chloe boosted power to their defensive systems. They're not trying to destroy us, Ryan reported, analyzing the weapon's fire. The shots are deliberately missing by safe margins. It's like they're warning us to stay away. Both fleets are firing warning shots, Alex confirmed. They see us as an intrusion into their private war. Jake realized that the alien civilizations had become so focused on their eternal conflict that they couldn't conceive of anything existing outside their binary struggle. To them, the universe consisted of only two sides, and anything else was simply an unwelcome distraction. Move us back to a safe distance, Jake ordered. Continue passive observation, but don't interfere with their combat. As the USS Horizon retreated to a safer position, Jake watched the alien fleets return to their endless dance of destruction. A ship would be destroyed, another would take its place. Formations would advance and retreat according to patterns established before human ancestors learned to use tools. The combatants fired their weapons with mechanical precision, each shot part of a routine that had been repeated millions of times. Captain, Danny said quietly, I don't think they remember how to stop fighting. The war has become their entire existence. They continue because it's all they know how to do. Jake stared at the ancient battle and wondered what force in the universe could possibly end a conflict that had lasted longer than human civilization had existed. The ships were too powerful for any external force to defeat, and the combatants were too locked in their patterns to consider peace. Yet somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice whispered that every problem had a solution, even one that had persisted for 800,000 years. The question was whether anyone was creative enough to find it. Jake Morrison sat in his captain's chair watching the endless battle rage before them, while his crew worked to understand what they were witnessing. The USS Horizon had been observing the conflict for 18 hours now, and the alien fleets showed no signs of stopping or changing their tactics. It was like watching a massive machine built for one purpose and one purpose only. Danny Wright looked up from his science console with excitement in his eyes. Captain, I think I understand why this war has lasted so long. Both civilizations started with nearly identical technology levels 800,000 years ago, and they've been developing new weapons and defenses at almost exactly the same rate ever since. What does that mean? Jake asked. Every time one side develops a new weapon, the other side creates a defense for it within a few thousand years, Danny explained. Every time someone builds better armor, their enemy builds a stronger gun. They've been locked in perfect technological balance for longer than our species has existed. Alex Rodriguez studied the tactical displays showing both fleets, so neither side has ever been able to gain a decisive advantage because they're too evenly matched. Exactly, Danny said. It's like two people of equal strength arm wrestling forever. Neither can defeat the other, but neither is willing to give up. Chloe Baker had been quietly running diagnostics on the alien weapons systems, using the USS Horizon sensors to analyze the energy signatures from both fleets. What she discovered made her call Jake over to her engineering station. "Captain, look at this," Chloe said, pointing to her display. "Both sides are using energy weapons that operate on very specific quantum frequencies. Their power cores all resonate at identical wavelengths, probably because they originally came from the same scientific breakthrough centuries ago." Jake studied the technical readouts, trying to understand what Chloe was showing him. Engineering had never been his strongest subject, but he trusted Chloe's expertise completely. "The interesting thing is that all their weapons and power systems are vulnerable to the same type of electromagnetic interference," Chloe continued. "If you could generate the right frequency pulse, you could theoretically shut down every power core in both fleets simultaneously." "Shut them down how?" Jake asked. "Temporarily overload the quantum resonance chambers," Chloe explained. "It wouldn't destroy the ships or hurt anyone, but it would disable their weapons and engines until they could restart their power systems." Lisa Carter had been monitoring alien communications and suddenly looked up with alarm in her voice. "Captain, I'm intercepting tactical transmissions from both fleets. They're discussing something called the Final Protocol." "What's the Final Protocol?" Alex asked. Lisa worked frantically to decode more of the alien language, her translation program struggling with concepts that had no human equivalent. "From what I can understand, it's some kind of ultimate weapon that both sides have been developing. Planet killers designed to destroy entire worlds." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Jake felt a cold weight settle in his stomach as he realized what they were hearing. "They're planning to escalate," Kevin Hayes said quietly. "After 800,000 years of conventional warfare, they're ready to start destroying planets." Danny ran calculations on his console, his face growing pale as he worked. "Captain, there are 17 inhabited star systems in this region. If both sides deploy planet-killing weapons, we're looking at the potential extinction of billions of intelligent beings." Jake stood and walked to the main screen, staring at the ancient fleets that continued their deadly dance. Somewhere on those ships were creatures who had been born into war, raised for battle and knew nothing of peace. Soon they would escalate to weapons that could destroy entire worlds, all because they had forgotten how to stop fighting. "How long before they deploy these final protocol weapons?" Jake asked. Lisa consulted her intercepts. "Based on their communications, both sides are preparing to activate them in the next standard cycle. That gives us about 72 hours. Alex moved to stand beside Jake at the main screen. "Captain, I have to ask the difficult question. Is this our problem? We're explorers, not peacekeepers. Our mission is to map star systems and find colony sites, not interfere in alien wars." Jake knew Alex was right from a purely logical standpoint. Earth's military doctrine was very clear about non-interference in conflicts between alien civilizations. The USS Horizon was not equipped for combat against fleets that could destroy planets. They should report their findings to Earth and let someone else make the hard decisions. "The problem is time," Jake said. "By the time we could get back to Earth and return with a proper diplomatic mission, billions of people will be dead." Ryan Phillips had been quietly analyzing the tactical situation, running combat simulations on his console. "Captain, even if we wanted to intervene, we don't have the firepower to stop either of these fleets. Our weapons couldn't scratch the paint on one of their smaller ships." "What about Chloe's idea?" Jake asked. "The electromagnetic pulse that could shut down their power cores." Chloe brought up technical specifications on her display. "Theoretically, it's possible, but we would need to modify our quantum resonance disruptor. That's our asteroid mining equipment, not a weapon." "Could it work?" Jake pressed. "Maybe," Chloe said carefully. "The QRD was designed to destabilize rock formations by disrupting molecular bonds. If I could recalibrate it to match the quantum frequency of their power cores, it might shut down both fleets without causing casualties." "What are the risks?" Alex asked. Chloe was quiet for a moment, running calculations in her head. "If the calibration is wrong, we could accidentally destroy both fleets instead of just disabling them. and the power requirements would drain our entire energy reserve. We'd be defenseless if they survived and decided to retaliate. Danny looked up from his science station with data that made the situation even more complex. Captain, there's something else to consider. I've been analyzing the battle patterns, and I think both sides have forgotten their original reasons for fighting. This war has become a tradition, something they do because it's all they've ever known. You're saying they might actually want to stop but don't know how? Jake asked. It's possible, Danny said. Sometimes it takes an outside perspective to see solutions that seem obvious to everyone, except the people directly involved in a problem. Grace. Turner had been quietly plotting courses and calculating distances. Captain, if we're going to try this, we need to position ourselves at the gravitational balance point between both fleets. It's the only location where a single pulse could reach every ship simultaneously. That's also the most dangerous position possible, Ryan pointed out. We'd be taking fire from both sides with no cover and no escape route. Jake looked around at his crew, seeing the same mix of fear and determination in their faces that he felt in his own chest. They were 43 people on a single ship, facing a decision that could affect the fate of billions of lives and civilizations that had existed since before humanity learned to make fire. The ethical weight of the situation pressed down on him like a physical force. They had no right to interfere in a conflict they didn't understand between species they had never met, but they also couldn't stand by and watch billions of innocent people die in an escalation of a war that had already lasted far too long. Begin preparations to modify the quantum resonance disruptor, Jake said finally. We're going to try to end an 800,000-year war. Jake Morrison gripped his captain's chair as the USS Horizon moved toward the most dangerous position in known space. The gravitational balance point between the two ancient fleets put them directly in the crossfire zone, where no ship had survived for thousands of years. Energy beams from both sides crisscrossed the space around them while Chloe Baker worked frantically in engineering to modify their mining equipment into a weapon that could end an 800,000-year war. Grace Turner's hands moved across her navigation, controls with the precision of a surgeon, executing micro-corrections to keep them positioned exactly where they needed to be. One mistake in navigation would either put them too close to one fleet or drift them out of the optimal firing position for the quantum resonance disruptor. 47 minutes remaining, Alex Rodriguez announced, watching the countdown timer that represented how long they had before both alien fleets would deploy planet-killing weapons. The final protocol that Lisa had intercepted from alien communications would begin in less than an hour, and once those weapons activated, billions of lives would be lost across 17 star systems. The first enemy shots came from the Zephyrian fleet, massive energy beams that lit up space around the USS Horizon. The alien ships had identified the human vessel as a new threat and temporarily ceased firing at each other to focus their weapons on this unexpected intruder that had dared to enter their sacred battlefield. Shields at 80%. Ryan Phillips reported as more weapons fire rained down on them. Both fleets are treating us as hostile. They're coordinating their attacks against us. Jake watched the tactical display as thousands of alien warships turned their weapons toward his small exploration vessel. For the first time in centuries, the Zephyrian Empire and Kythera Federation had found something they could agree on. The USS Horizon represented an outside interference in their private war, and both sides wanted it destroyed. Evasive maneuvers, Jake ordered, but Grace was already executing a complex flight pattern designed to minimize their exposure to enemy fire. The ship shuddered under the impact of energy weapons while sparks flew from overloaded systems throughout the bridge. Lisa Carter worked at her communications station, sending surrender messages in every language their computers could generate. I'm broadcasting non-hostile intentions on all frequencies, she reported, but neither side is responding. They don't seem to understand any concept except warfare. In engineering, Chloe Baker rerouted power from every non-essential system to feed the modified quantum resonance disruptor. Life support, artificial gravity, even the hyperspace drive were stripped of power to charge the weapon that had never been designed for military use. Engineering to bridge. Chloe's voice crackled over the intercom. I'm getting power fluctuations from the weapon modifications. The QRD was never meant to handle this kind of energy load. How long can the modifications hold together? Jake asked. Unknown, Captain. We're in completely uncharted territory here. The weapon could work perfectly, blow up in our faces, or just fail to fire when we need it most. Kevin Hayes moved through the bridge treating injured crew members as alien weapons fire continued to pound their shields. The medical officer's calm demeanor helped keep everyone focused despite the chaos around them. "We have casualties on decks 3 and 4, he reported. "Nothing critical yet, but if this keeps up, we're going to start losing people." Danny Wright monitored quantum field readings from his science station, watching energy patterns that no human had ever observed before. "Captain, the weapon charge is creating visible distortions in space-time around our ship. I think the alien fleets are starting to realize we're not carrying conventional weapons." 32 minutes remaining, Alex announced. The USS Horizon continued to take punishment from both alien fleets while Chloe worked to complete the weapon modifications. Enemy fire had damaged their primary power grid, forcing her to create bypass circuits using spare parts and emergency supplies. The ship's systems were being pushed far beyond their design limits. "Shields down to 40%, Ryan reported. "We're losing structural integrity on the outer hull. If they concentrate fire on any single section, they'll punch right through." Grace executed another evasive maneuver, but the alien ships were adapting to her flight patterns. 800,000 years of warfare had taught both fleets how to track and destroy moving targets with frightening efficiency. "Captain," Lisa called out, "I'm intercepting communications from both fleets. They're discussing whether to use their final protocol weapons against us instead of waiting for the planned deployment." The implications hit Jake immediately. If either fleet decided to use planet-killing weapons against the USS Horizon, they would not only destroy his ship, but potentially damage their own forces in the process. The escalation he was trying to prevent might happen early because of his intervention. "How much longer, Chloe?" Jake called to engineering. 15 minutes to complete calibration," came the reply. "But Captain, I had to shut down life support to get enough power. We have maybe 25 minutes of breathable air left in the ship." Jake did the math quickly. They needed 15 minutes to finish the weapon, but they only had 25 minutes of air remaining. If the plan worked, they would have enough time to restore life support before anyone suffocated. If the plan failed, they would die either from lack of oxygen or from alien weapons fire. 26 minutes remaining until final protocol activation, Alex announced. Ryan coordinated point defense systems while Grace continued evasive maneuvers, but both knew they were fighting a losing battle. The USS Horizon had been designed for exploration, not combat against fleets that could destroy planets. Their shields were failing and their hull was taking damage faster than their repair systems could compensate. "Artificial gravity offline," Grace reported as the crew began floating in their seats. "Emergency magnetic boots activated." The bridge lights flickered as power fluctuations rippled through the ship's systems. Chloe was drawing energy from every possible source to power the modified weapon, leaving them with only the most basic life support functions. "Weapon calibration at 90%, Chloe announced over the intercom. "I'm detecting quantum resonance patterns from both alien fleets. The frequency match looks good." Danny monitored his instruments as space around the USS Horizon began to shimmer with energy distortions. "Captain, the quantum field buildup is affecting local space-time. Both alien fleets have stopped firing at us. I think they realize something major is about to happen." Jake watched the main screen as thousands of alien warships seemed to pause in their eternal dance of destruction. For the first time in 800,000 years, both fleets had stopped shooting at each other and were focusing entirely on the small human ship that had dared to interfere in their ancient conflict. "Weapon ready," Chloe announced. "Captain, once I fire this thing, we'll have no power left for shields or engines. If it doesn't work, we're completely defenseless." 18 minutes remaining, Alex said quietly. Jake looked around at his crew, seeing fear and determination in equal measure on every face. 43 people were about to risk everything on a plan that had never been tested, using equipment that was never designed for this purpose, all to save billions of lives they had never met and stop a war that had raged since before humanity existed. "Fire the weapon," Jake ordered. The quantum resonance disruptor fired at exactly 15 hours and 47 minutes ship time, sending a wave of energy unlike anything ever recorded in galactic warfare across the ancient battlefield. Jake Morrison watched from his captain's chair as the pulse traveled at the speed of light, washing over both alien fleets in a brilliant flash that temporarily overloaded every sensor on the USS Horizon. For 37 seconds, the energy wave expanded outward from their position, reaching every Zephyrian and Kythera warship simultaneously. The pulse passed through shields and armor as if they did not exist, targeting only the quantum resonance chambers that powered every weapon and engine in both fleets. Then came the silence. For 800,000 years, the sound of energy weapons firing had echoed continuously through this region of space. The constant thunder of massive guns and the crackle of defensive shields had become the background noise of the galaxy's longest war. Now, for the first time in nearly a million years, absolute quiet fell across the battlefield. Every power core in both fleets experienced quantum destabilization, exactly as Chloe Baker had predicted. Weapons systems that had fired without pause for centuries suddenly went dark. Shield generators that had protected ships through countless battles simply stopped working. Engines that had maneuvered through tactical formations older than human civilization fell silent. Did it work? Alex Rodriguez asked, staring at the tactical display that showed thousands of alien warships drifting powerless in space. Danny Wright checked his sensor readings with amazement. All weapons fire has stopped. Both fleets are completely dead in space. No active power signatures from any vessel. The USS Horizon floated in the gravitational balance point between two vast armadas that had suddenly become nothing more than elaborate sculptures drifting through the void. Without power, the massive warships could not maneuver, could not fight, and most importantly, could not activate the final protocol weapons that would have destroyed billions of lives. Lisa Carter monitored communication frequencies and found something that made her voice shake with excitement. "Captain, I'm receiving transmissions from both fleets. They're trying to contact each other." "What are they saying?" Jake asked. Lisa worked frantically with her translation programs, processing languages that had evolved in isolation for millennia. It's difficult to translate, but both sides are asking the same question. They want to know what happens now. Kevin Hayes scanned the alien vessels with his medical sensors and found something remarkable. "Captain, life support systems on both fleets are still operational. The quantum pulse only affected their weapons and engines. Everyone aboard those ships is alive and unharmed." Jake realized what this meant. For the first time in 800,000 years, the crews of both fleets were alive but unable to fight. They had weapons that could not fire, engines that could not move them into battle position, and shields that could not protect them from attack. They were forced to simply exist in the same space without killing each other. "Restore life support," Jake ordered, and Chloe immediately began rerouting power back to essential systems. The USS Horizon had gambled everything on a single shot, and somehow the impossible plan had worked. Grace Turner stabilized their position, while Ryan Phillips ran diagnostics on their own systems. The human ship had survived the most dangerous hour in galactic history with minor damage and no casualties among the crew. "Captain," Lisa said, her voice filled with wonder, "I'm receiving a direct communication request from the flagship of each fleet. They want to talk to us." Jake felt the weight of history settling on his shoulders. Representatives of civilizations that had fought longer than humanity had existed were asking to speak with him. A simple exploration captain, who had stumbled into their ancient war, "Open a channel to both ships simultaneously," Jake ordered. The main screen divided to show two very different alien beings. On the left was a tall, crystalline creature that seemed to be made of living mineral, representing the Zephyrian Empire. On the right was a fluid being that appeared to shift between liquid and gas states, speaking for the Kythera Federation. Both aliens began speaking at the same time, their translated words overlapping in a confusion of ancient languages and concepts that human translation systems struggled to process. Jake raised his hand for silence and, remarkably, both beings stopped talking and waited for him to speak. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the human starship USS Horizon," he said, trying to keep his voice calm despite the magnitude of the moment. "We detected your conflict and chose to intervene because both sides were preparing to deploy weapons that would have killed billions of innocent people." The crystalline Zephyrian leader spoke first. "Human Morrison, my people have fought the Kythera for 800,000 of your years. We do not understand what you have done to our ships, but we cannot continue the battle. What is your purpose here?" The fluid Kythera representative rippled with what might have been confusion. "Captain Morrison, The Zephyrian Empire has been our enemy since before your species learned to use tools. Without our weapons, without our ability to fight, what are we supposed to do? Jake realized that both leaders were genuinely confused by the concept of not fighting. The war had become so fundamental to their existence that they could not imagine any other way of relating to each other. You could try talking to each other instead of shooting, Jake suggested. 800,000 years is a long time to hold a grudge. Do either of you even remember why this war started? Both alien leaders fell silent for a long moment. The crystalline Zephyrian consulted with others on his bridge before responding. The historical records from that time period have been lost. We fight because we have always fought. The Cathera leader made a sound that the translation system interpreted as bitter laughter. Our oldest surviving records speak of a territorial dispute over mining rights in a system that was destroyed by warfare 60,000 years ago. We continue because stopping would mean admitting that countless generations died for nothing. Danny Wright had been analyzing the alien ship configurations and spoke up. Captain, both fleets show signs of extensive modification over centuries. These vessels have been converted into generational ships. Entire civilizations live aboard these fleets. Jake understood the full scope of what they were dealing with. These were not just military forces. They were entire cultures that had been shaped by perpetual warfare. Peace was not just the absence of fighting for them. It was the complete restructuring of their entire way of life. How long before your ships can restore power? Jake asked. Our engineers estimate 12 to 15 hours for basic systems, the Zephyrian replied. Full weapons capability will require several days. The same for our vessels, the Cathera leader confirmed. Jake saw an opportunity in this temporary ceasefire. That gives us time to talk. Representatives from both fleets could meet aboard my ship. We could discuss terms for ending this conflict permanently. Both alien leaders looked skeptical, but the crystalline Zephyrian spoke first. You would guarantee safe passage for negotiations? The USS Horizon will serve as neutral ground, Jake confirmed. No weapons, no violence, just conversation. The fluid Cathera leader seemed to consider this carefully. And if we cannot reach an agreement? What happens when our weapons are restored? Then you go back to fighting and destroying each other for another 800,000 years, Jake said bluntly. But at least you'll have tried something different. Both leaders agreed to send diplomatic representatives to the USS Horizon within the next few hours. As the communication ended, Jake looked around at his crew and realized that 43 humans had just accomplished something that two advanced civilizations could not achieve in nearly 1,000,000 years of trying. The ancient war was over, at least temporarily. What came next would depend on whether beings who had known nothing but conflict for longer than human civilization had existed could learn to build something better together. The galaxy held its breath and waited to see what peace might look like after 800,000 years of war.